He is pathetic. That is what Nick Sirianni looked like sprinting down the sideline, his face red, his voice cutting through the stadium noise as he confronted A.J. Brown during the Eagles' wildcard playoff loss to the 49ers. This is the moment that exposed everything deeply wrong with the Philadelphia Eagles and why NFL legends absolutely hate what they saw. If you have ever wondered what happens when a championship team falls apart in real time, this is your answer. The stage was a playoff game, the stakes were everything, and in one heated exchange, the entire culture of a franchise crumbled in front of 30 million viewers. It starts with context. The Eagles came into the 2025 season with Super Bowl expectations. They finished 11-6, which sounds okay, until you realize it meant they limped into the postseason. The offense had stalled. It was unpredictable. It was heavy. Kevin Patullo, the offensive coordinator, had turned an explosive unit into something stuck in neutral. Worse, it felt like the team was playing with one hand tied. A.J. Brown, the best receiver in football, was not happy. He wanted the ball. He wanted explosive plays. He was not getting either. By game day against San Francisco, the tension was already there. Fans could feel it. Analysts could see it in Brown's body language. Nick Sirianni could definitely feel it. The game itself was close. It was January 11th, 2026 at Lincoln Financial Field. The Eagles held a 13-10 lead going into halftime. The 49ers were beat up. Their tight end, George Kittle, would leave with an Achilles injury during the game. The Eagles had a chance. They had hope. Then, late in the second quarter, everything broke. This is where the story gets ugly. If you think this video deserves some hype, make sure you hit that feature and show some love. It helps us create content like this. The wind was swirling inside the stadium that day. Nick Sirianni would later blame the wind for the drops. He said the ball moves very differently in the wind. That was true, but it became his excuse, not his explanation. On a deep shot downfield, Hurts targeted Brown. The pass came out incomplete. A receiver of Brown's caliber should definitely make that play. He did not. On the next play, 3rd down and 9, the Eagles needed a conversion. Hurts threw deep again. This time the ball was well thrown. It hit Brown in the hands, it hit him square, and he dropped it. The crowd gasped. The ball fell to the turf. The drive was dead. Now comes the moment everyone argues about. The offense had to clear the field because the punt unit was coming on. A.J. Brown, the star receiver, needed to get to the sideline. Nick Sirianni yelled for him to move. That is Sirianni's explanation. That is his alibi. He was trying to avoid a too many men on the field penalty. That penalty is 5 yards. In a 13-10 game, 5 yards matters. But what happened next was not a coach waving a player off. Sirianni sprinted down his sideline. He ran 15 to 20 yards directly toward Brown. He got in Brown's face. He was screaming. Brown removed his helmet in frustration and yelled back. The two were nose to nose. The shouting match escalated until Dom DeSandro, the team's security officer, had to physically step between them and separate the coach from the player. When your own security has to break up your head coach and star receiver, something has gone very wrong. Sirianni later said he was just trying to prevent a penalty, but the footage told a different story. The intensity was not about 5 yards. The intensity was about frustration that had been building all season. It was about a coach watching his offense fail when it mattered most. It was about a receiver who was not delivering when targeted. The too many men penalty became a convenient excuse to mask the emotional rot underneath. This is where the legends of the game enter the chat. Number 5 on the disappointment list is Rex Ryan. Rex was not diplomatic. Rex called for the nuclear option. Fire Sirianni. Trade A.J. Brown. He said the offense was unserious. It was high school level. He said the coaching staff failed to put players in positions to succeed. He said the drama was self-inflicted. To Rex, once public fracture happens and legends validate it, the window for contention closes. He saw a coach who lost the locker room. He saw a diva receiver who had become a problem. He saw a franchise that was eating itself. Number 4 is Tom Brady. Brady called the game for Fox. He tried to downplay it at first. He said Sirianni and Brown had a great relationship. But then he shifted. He talked about turmoil. He talked about accountability. Brady noted that the visual of the two most visible figures in an organization screaming at each other in a win or go-home game contradicted everything the team preached about culture. Brady understood something fundamental. Public dissension in the playoffs is usually fatal. It kills team cohesion, it kills focus, it kills championship dreams. The visual did not match the messaging. Number 3 is Shannon Sharpe. Shannon did not focus on Sirianni as much as he focused on Brown. After the game, Brown refused to speak to the media. He shook hands with teammates and told reporters he was about to go. That infuriated Sharp. Real legends face the music after losses and drops, not just when they are winning. Media availability is not optional for a franchise player. The media is how you connect with fans who pay your salary. By hiding after a poor performance, Brown was ducking accountability. 3 catches, 25 yards, critical drops, and silence. To a player like Sharp, who thrived on facing tough questions at the podium, that felt like cowardice. That felt like entitlement. That felt like the modern diva receiver archetype at its worst. Number 2 is Michael Strawn. Strawn approached this from the player's perspective. He said he did not understand why Sirianni ran down and yelled at Brown like that. As a player, Strawn said he would not have taken it well. Strawn theorized that Brown was already frustrated by lack of targets. Brown wanted the ball. He wanted involvement. The drops came from pressing, from trying too hard to prove something. When a coach then sprints down the sideline and screams in your face, what does that accomplish? It does not help focus. It does not help performance. It destroys confidence. To Strahan, Sirianni's behavior was performative and counterproductive. It made the moment about the coach's authority rather than the team's execution. That is not leadership. That is ego. Number 1 is Nick Sirianni himself, because at the end of the day, the blame lands here. Sirianni is the head coach. He is responsible for the culture. He is responsible for communication. He is responsible for composure. The optics of sprinting down a sideline and getting in a player's face, regardless of the reason, sends a message. It says the team is not disciplined. It says leadership is lost. It says the culture is broken. Even if the too many men explanation is 100% true, a great coach finds a different way. A great coach uses quiet authority. A great coach does not need security to separate him from his players. A great coach does not let his emotions override his judgment in a playoff game. What happened in the second half made everything considerably worse. Brown disappeared. 0 catches in the second half. None. On the final drive, he had a crucial drop. The Eagles lost 23-19. The season ended. The message was sent. When your star receiver produces nothing after the meltdown, the narrative becomes about distraction. It becomes about whether his head was in the game. It becomes about whether the sideline drama cost the Eagles a playoff win. We will never know if a different approach, a calmer approach, a more professional approach changes the outcome. But we know the way it was handled made things worse. The fallout was immediate and very brutal. Kevin Patullo, the offensive coordinator, was fired 2 days later. Not Sirianni, not Brown, the coordinator. That is classic NFL damage control. You fire someone to show accountability without blowing up the core. It signals to the fan base that changes are being made. It protects the head coach and the star player in the short term. But it also admits that the offense was broken, which validates everything Rex Ryan said about the scheme being unserious. Then came the trade speculation. Could the Eagles move A.J. Brown? The financial answer is very complicated and deeply problematic. If they trade him before June 1st, they absorb $43.5 million in dead cap while only saving $20.1 million. That is financial suicide. If they trade him after June 1st, the hit drops to $16.35 million and they save $7 million. But here's the problem. A post-June 1st trade means they do not get draft picks in 2026. They get them in 2027. The Eagles are in a win-now window. Trading their best receiver for future assets contradicts that timeline. The Patriots, Raiders, and Chargers were mentioned as possible landing spots, but every option is painful. Jalen Hurts, Brown's best friend and the godfather to his children, was caught directly in the middle. When asked about the situation, Hurts was deflective. He said he and Brown had talked and were in a great place. Then he told the media to ask Brown directly. That comment was subtle but telling. Hurts was adhering to the accountability code while Brown was hiding. It suggested a fracture in the relationship that had once made them the league's most dangerous duo. Hurts' stats were poor too, 168 passing yards, but the drops directly impacted those numbers. What was once a symbiotic partnership felt parasitic. The bigger picture here is pattern. This was not one game. This was not one dropped pass. Brown had a history. In January 2024 and again in 2026, he scrubbed Eagles content from his Instagram. He deactivated his Twitter account. He posted cryptic messages, using me, but not using me. Bible verses about quietly withdrawing when not listened to. These are not accidents. These are messages. They are shots at the coaching staff. They are shots at the quarterback. They undermine team unity. When a player publicly questions his usage while the team is winning, it creates a narrative of selfishness. The tolerance for diva behavior in the NFL is directly correlated to production. Players who produce can get away with eccentricities. Players who do not, cannot. Brown's production vanished when it mattered most. 7 targets in the game, 3 receptions, 25 yards, 0 second-half catches, 2 critical drops. That is not the stat line of a franchise savior. That is the stat line of a player whose focus was compromised. That is the stat line of someone who was not present mentally after the sideline meltdown. The legends saw all of this. They saw a player who demanded the ball, who was frustrated about his usage, who yelled at his quarterback during the season, and then who disappeared when the game was on the line. They saw accountability avoided. They saw professionalism abandoned. They saw a franchise player choosing his emotions over his team. The Eagles tried what is called a soft reboot. They fired the coordinator. They hoped time would heal the Sirianni-Brown rift. They made it clear to the world that changes were being made. But history suggests that once public hate from legends validates internal dysfunction, the window for championship contention closes rapidly. The blunder was a dropped pass. The blow-up was a broken culture. The fallout may be the dismantling of the Eagles as we know them. Here is what needs to happen next. First, Nick Sirianni has to prove he can lead differently. He has to show composure. He has to show restraint. He has to make the tough but correct decision about whether this team can move forward together. Second, A.J. Brown has to face the music. He has to answer questions. He has to explain his behavior. He has to show that he understands the professional standards of being a franchise player. He has to prove that his outbursts and media avoidance are behind him. Third, the Eagles have to decide what they actually are. Are they a contender? Then make the moves to support that. Are they rebuilding? Then be honest about it. Do not pretend to be both. The 2026 season is a referendum on all of this, on whether culture can be rebuilt after being publicly fractured, on whether a coach and a player can repair mutual respect after screaming in each other's faces in front of millions, on whether professional standards matter or if championships excuse everything. The Eagles thought they could win now. They thought they had built something sustainable. One playoff game and one sideline moment exposed that belief as fragile. One moment showed that the foundation was not as solid as anyone believed. The legends hate what they saw because they understand something modern football sometimes forgets. Winning is not just about talent. It is about discipline. It is about accountability. It is about leadership that does not need a security officer to maintain control. It is about players who understand that media availability is part of the job. It is about coaches who do not let their emotions override their judgment in critical moments. The Eagles failed on every one of those counts. That is why the hate is so loud. That is why the backlash is so severe. That is why this moment will define the franchise's trajectory for years to come. The next chapter has not been written yet. The Eagles can still fix this. They can still find a way to move forward. But it starts with acknowledging what went wrong and committing to do better. It starts with humility. It starts with understanding that culture is not something you build once and then ignore. Culture is something you maintain every single day. Culture is tested most in the moments when things fall apart. The Eagles were tested on January 11th, 2026, and they failed. The question now is whether they have the wisdom and the will to learn from that failure. That is where the focus needs to be heading into the offseason, not on blame, not on excuses, but on real, meaningful change. That is the only way this team gets back to where it thinks it deserves to be. This story matters because it is not just about football. It is about expectations colliding with reality. The Eagles had talent, a star receiver, a young quarterback with unlimited potential, a head coach with a clear vision, but talent without discipline is chaos. Talent without real leadership is just individual performance. The wild card game showed that championship football requires more than star power. It requires systems. It requires accountability. The 49ers, coached by Kyle Shanahan, operated like a chess match. Every player knew exactly what to do. The Eagles, by comparison, looked improvised. They were hoping individual brilliance would save them. That does not work in the playoffs. The wind was swirling. The pressure was mounting. The moment was enormous. In that crucible, the Eagles revealed who they really are. not a championship team, not a disciplined organization, an organization struggling with identity and culture. That is why the legends hated what they saw. That is why the backlash was so fierce. The sideline blow-up meant the foundation was cracked. The house was not as sturdy as advertised. The Eagles, despite their talent, were not ready for the championship moment. Now they have to prove they can be.